In May of 1945, World War II is almost over. A group of American soldiers is leading civilians down a road when they suddenly see a Nazi car driving through the crowd. The soldiers prepare to fire, but the driver raises a white cloth to show they are surrendering. To everyone's surprise, Hitler's second-in-command, Hermann, steps out of the car and calmly asks the soldiers to collect his luggage. Back in Washington, D.C., Supreme Court Justice Jackson learns that Hermann has been captured alive in Austria. The original plan was to execute him right away, but Jackson believes no one should be punished without a fair trial. He wants to put all surviving Nazi leaders on trial for war crimes. When he discusses this with his secretary, she warns him it may not be possible. International law does not allow one country to judge another country's citizens, and holding trials in Germany would be legally unclear. Still, Jackson believes it can work if it is organized properly, starting with judges from each allied nation forming a joint court. At the same time, U.S. Army psychiatrist Douglas is traveling by train in Luxembourg. He flirts with a woman named Leia by performing a simple magic trick. When the train arrives, Sergeant Howie meets Douglas and tells him he will act as his interpreter. They go to the Grand Hotel Mondorf, where Colonel Andrews explains that the hotel is secretly being used as a military prison for the remaining Nazi leaders. Since the Allied countries are still deciding whether to hold trials, Douglas has been brought in to watch over the prisoners' mental health. The biggest fear is suicide, since 3 prisoners have already killed themselves using hidden poison capsules. Douglas is especially assigned to Hermann, who was found carrying a large supply of pills. Hermann says the medicine is for his heart, but he takes 40 pills a day, leading Douglas to believe he is addicted. Before settling in, Douglas asks to see Hermann, who is reading calmly in his room while Howie translates. Douglas checks Hermann's pulse and lungs. Hermann insists he needs his medicine because he suffers constant pain from a wound he received in World War I. Douglas tells him losing weight would help his heart, which offends Hermann. After leaving, Douglas tells Howie that Hermann understands English, since he reacted before the translation. Douglas then meets the other prisoners. Dr. Lely, who ran the Nazi slave labor program, claims he was not obsessed with power like the others. The Great Admiral complains that he has been imprisoned for 76 days without charges and calls it a violation of the Geneva Convention. Julius, Hitler's propaganda chief, asks Douglas if he is Jewish. When Douglas says no, Julius responds that psychiatry itself is a Jewish profession. Soon, Hermann starts exercising and dieting and stops asking for medicine. That night, Douglas writes his thoughts in a journal and realizes that Hermann is the one holding the group together. Wanting to understand them better, Douglas asks Howie to take him to the library. They fill a wheelbarrow with books about Nazi leaders. Douglas hopes that learning more about them will help him gain their trust and understand how people commit such terrible acts. He also believes that publishing his findings could make him rich and help prevent similar horrors in the future. When they return to the hotel, a guard says that Hermann is having trouble breathing. Douglas quickly realizes Hermann is having a heart attack. He asks for aspirin and helps Hermann stay calm by guiding his breathing. Hermann reaches for a photo of his wife, and Douglas gives it to him. When the aspirin arrives, Hermann refuses to take it until Douglas tastes it first. Hermann recovers before the doctor arrives and even thanks Douglas in English. Back in Washington, Jackson learns that all the Allied nations have agreed to hold the trials. Army lawyer Ammons tells him that military leaders want fast trials followed by executions, and some believe the trials may not happen at all. At the hotel, Douglas gives the prisoners the Rorschach test and promises their answers will stay private. Hermann cooperates, but Julius makes crude comments about every image. Later, Jackson finds out that Congress is against the trials and wants executions instead. The president refuses to step in, so Jackson turns to the Vatican for support. After arguing with the Pope about justice and pointing out his past agreement with Hitler, Jackson finally gains the church's backing. Douglas and Howie later escort the prisoners by plane and tell them they will be put on trial. Hermann asks about his test results, and Douglas describes him as smart, self-centered, and controlling. Hermann laughs it off and jokes that he will escape execution like a magic trick. The prisoners grow angry when they see important government buildings destroyed below them. In Nuremberg, Andrews explains the strict changes made to the prison to prevent suicide. Lely breaks down when he sees his cell, while Hermann praises German craftsmanship and says no one has ever defeated him. Douglas is confused by Hermann's rising confidence and tries to understand it. Douglas learns that Hitler's deputy, Rudolf, is also being held and is suspected of pretending to have amnesia. Douglas asks Hermann to help expose Rudolf in exchange for delivering letters to his missing family. Herman agrees. Douglas and Howie find Herman's wife Emmy and their daughter, and Douglas promises to bring Emmy's reply back to him. When they return, reporters surround the prison as the prisoners are officially charged. Herman is informed of charges including war crimes, crimes against humanity, and conspiracy. Julius demands a Jewish lawyer. Lely panics, claims he never killed anyone, and attacks Douglas, revealing that he understands English. Douglas later runs into Leia again and learns she is a reporter covering the trials. She warns him that the city will turn into a public show. Douglas delivers Emmy's letter to Herman while the media reports on the rebuilt courtroom and its heavy security. Jackson then faces a legal problem when Germany claims its invasion of Norway and Denmark was meant to stop a British attack. With no proof to counter this, Jackson realizes he needs inside information from the prisoners. He secretly asks Douglas to help, even though it breaks ethical rules. Jackson explains that simply executing the Nazis would turn them into martyrs. Later, Douglas shares cigarettes with Herman and suggests they talk about Hitler. Herman says Hitler made people feel German again by promising to restore the country's pride. He claims the camps were meant for work, not death, and blames the worst crimes on others. Still, he refuses to say anything bad about Hitler. The next day, Douglas tells Jackson that Herman knows how to appear kind and wonders how much of his story is true. Ammons becomes angry, thinking Douglas is defending Herman, and they argue. Douglas explains that his role is to study Herman, and he believes Herman only cared about making Germany strong. Herman may not have wanted Jews killed, but he also did not care when they died. Jackson remains doubtful, and Douglas warns that going into the trial with assumptions will allow Herman to outsmart them. Later, Douglas speaks with Lely, who apologizes for his earlier outburst and says he has started preparing his defense. Douglas feels he is finally getting through to him. A few hours later, an alarm sounds. Douglas runs to Lely's cell but arrives too late. Lely has killed himself by hanging himself with a towel and stuffing his mouth to stay silent. Andrews is furious and announces that he is bringing in another doctor for a second opinion. In their next meeting, Douglas asks Herman what he thinks about suicide. Herman calls it the choice of a coward. He can tell Douglas is in danger and warns him to be careful, saying allies do not always stay loyal. He then tells a disturbing story about his father's Jewish best friends secretly abusing his mother. Dr. Gilbert later arrives to review Douglas's reports. He believes Rudolph's memory loss is real and suggests that he and Douglas write a book together, but Douglas refuses. As time passes, Douglas keeps talking with the prisoners and secretly sharing information with Jackson. He also continues visiting Herman's family and performs magic tricks for Herman's daughter, Ada. Douglas brings more letters to Herman, who wants to learn the tricks so he can impress his daughter one day. Howie notices that Douglas often visits Herman alone and grows suspicious, but Douglas ignores him. On the night before the trial, Douglas asks Herman how he plans to defend himself. Herman asks if Douglas is speaking as a friend, and Douglas says yes. Herman explains that he will accept responsibility for his own actions but deny blame for crimes he claims he did not know about. Douglas passes this information on to Jackson. The next day, the prisoners are taken through a tunnel to the courthouse. Herman speaks confidently with the others in German. Jackson opens the trial with a speech broadcast on the radio. Herman asks to make an opening statement, but the judges refuse and ask for his plea. Herman answers, "Not guilty," in German. That evening, Douglas goes to check on Herman's family, but he finds their furniture broken and piled outside the house. A neighbor tells him the Americans took them away. Douglas rushes to Andrews, who finds out that Emmy was arrested for possibly helping Herman hide stolen artwork, and Ada was sent to a convent where no one is allowed to contact her. Andrews asks how Douglas knew where the family was hiding, but Douglas avoids answering. When Douglas later visits Herman, he lies and says the family is fine. Gilbert interrupts and tells the truth. Douglas follows Gilbert into the hallway and starts a fight with him. Guards pull them apart, and Andrews yells at both of them for acting like children. The trial continues as Jackson shows shocking footage that has never been seen before. The film shows liberated concentration camps, piles of dead bodies, starving survivors, tattooed prisoners, and ovens that could burn hundreds of bodies each day. Herman refuses to watch and puts on headphones and sunglasses. Douglas leaves the courtroom, barely holding himself together. Back in Herman's cell, Douglas confronts him and says he must have known what was happening in the camps. Herman claims the footage is fake and accuses Douglas of hypocrisy, pointing to the atomic bomb dropped on Japan. Douglas snaps and yells about the difference between war deaths and genocide. He storms out, telling Herman that his choices destroyed his own family. Douglas goes to a bar and drinks too much. Leia finds him and uses his drunken state to get information from him. The next day, a newspaper publishes details of Douglas's private talks with Herman. Furious, Andrews fires Douglas but tells him that Emmy and Ada have been released. At the train station, Douglas meets Howie, who reveals he was born in Germany to Jewish parents. He and his sister escaped, but their parents were killed by the Nazis. Howie begs Douglas to do something to stop Herman. Douglas says he is only a psychiatrist. Howie reminds him that the Holocaust happened because people ignored it until it was too late. Douglas rushes to Jackson's office and says the trial is a trap. He explains that Herman surrendered on purpose so he could defend Hitler in front of the world. Douglas hands Jackson his notebook filled with private conversations and tells him to use Herman's ego against him. Douglas stays in Germany as a civilian to watch the rest of the trial. Herman takes the stand, posing confidently for photos. He says the camps were only work sites and claims he knew nothing about mass killings. When shown the document called The Final Solution, Herman says it was mistranslated. Jackson loses his temper and is forced to step away. Faye takes over and asks Herman if he is still loyal to Hitler. Herman says yes and even shouts "Heil Hitler," destroying his own case. Andrews, Jackson, Howie, and Faye thank Douglas for giving them the key information. Douglas later visits Herman one last time and admits he broke doctor-patient trust. The next day, Douglas leaves Germany as the prisoners are sentenced to death by hanging. The executions are planned for midnight, and the prisoners are not told until shortly before. While Andrews speaks to reporters, Herman uses Douglas's magic trick to reveal a hidden poison capsule and kills himself. Julius breaks down before his execution and dies crying. One by one, the remaining prisoners are executed. After the trials, Douglas writes a book about his experience, but it fails because people ignore his warning that evil can exist anywhere. He becomes an alcoholic and later kills himself using the same poison Herman used. Howie leaves the army and lives peacefully with his sister. Jackson returns to the Supreme Court, and the trial becomes the basis for modern war crimes law. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this.